Reeves Electro is a company known for making high-end boutique pedals, and yeah, a lot of them are fuzz pedals. You guys already know that though, because I've featured plenty of them on this channel, and in my opinion, they are always hits. Never any skips. Not only do they sound stunning, but they are also stunning to look at from the inside. The pedal guts of these pedals are just immaculate. The craft, care and attention that goes into the Reeves Electro pedals is second to none. But I think this one here might be my favourite yet. This is the Izzrite from the Izzy Reeves half of Reeves Electro. And it's just super, super cool, man. It's got that primal, fuzz-wired part of my brain all lit up. Let's get into it. The Izzrite is a take on the Fuzzrite, which was originally made by Fuzzrite back in the mid-60s. And like a lot of 60s fuzzers, the circuit itself is pretty simple, quite primitive actually. Only a handful of components doing a lot of the heavy lifting inside of here. And it's in those types of circuits where the right components can make all the difference. The original Fuzzrite, I believe, was a simple 2-transistor circuit. Most were silicon, but I believe there were a few rarer germanium versions too. And it's known for this raw, biting fuzz that just cuts straight through a mix. It's not very refined, I guess, and it's not woolly like a fuzz face. It's harsh and it's ratty and it can be clangy, but can also still be warm. It's all upper mids and attitude. If you've ever heard the Stooges, I think it's I Wanna Be Your Dog, that tune. That tone on there is a Fuzzrite. And the Izzrite, you know what, keeps a lot of that attitude and that character, but adds just a touch of modern refinement. He's just tidied up around the edges a little bit. Izzy's found that sweet spot that is hard to get, where it still feels vintage, but acts much more predictably. The NOS silicon transistors in here keep that distinctive vintage voice, and you can actually hear them interplaying together, and you can bring them in at different points using these controls. Compared to a lot of other 60s style fuzzers, it's really obvious on the Izzrite when that second gain stage, aka the second transistor, kicks in. It's like this delicate balance between chaos and control. And in fact, one of the best sounds is when you have it just on the edge of that chaos control balance. Okay, 3 controls up top help us achieve that balance that I was mentioning between control and chaos. And no, it's not your typical volume, tone, gain setup. In fact, the control layout here is one of the most interesting things about the Izzrite. We do have volume though, of course, and the Izzrite fixes a common problem with the Fuzzrite, and it adds quite a bit more volume in here. So you're not going to worry about being too quiet when you're using this pedal. And then we have depth on the right and height in the middle. And you know what? I think they are perfectly named, because without knowing what these controls do, yeah, it kind of feels like you're adjusting the depth and the kind of airiness, height of the tone. But if you wanted to get into it, depth adjusts the balance between the low gain and the high gain sides of the pedal, basically when that second transistor joins the party. Height, on the other hand, adjusts the bias of one of those transistors, tweaking how interactive they are together, how dynamic the pedal is. I will say, actually, all the way down on the height control is like a stock original Fuzzrite. But wherever you set this pedal, it is an unruly, gnarly, primal, snarling fuzz. That is a little bit harsh sounding, but never gets unpleasant in my opinion. It's got all that bite, but without the ear fatigue, if you know what I'm talking about. Because it is so primal and a little bit primitive as well, it can get a little noisy at times. Sometimes you'll get a little interference or a little bit of static, but usually that is fixed with an ever so slight knob tweak. And if you're also running a really good power supply or putting the Izzrite at the front of your signal chain. But I found the best way to eliminate noise and actually make this pedal sound better almost 100% of the time is just by turning your guitar's volume knob down a hair, maybe to like 9, and it really sounds like it opens up the pedal. Not only that, but it does reduce the noise. So much so that most of the time during this demo, my Strat is on like 9 on the volume because it just sounds better and is quieter. But if you do want to play with your volume knob on your guitar, this is a super dynamic duo between this fuzz pedal and your guitar. Incredibly interactive, doesn't clean up quite in the same way as a fuzz face does, but it still cleans up. And then when you crank your guitar to 10, it's just an exploding mess and it's cool. pedal's sick. It really is cool. I've not even mentioned how great it looks. I love the blacked out look, the black knobs, black artwork on a black enclosure as well. It looks really, really cool. It almost looks sort of like a weird prototype on your pedal board. And you know what? Black foot switch. That really finishes it off nicely. And yeah, for me, I think this is the coolest Reeves Electro fuzz pedal yet. The scope of tone is just spot on. It's slightly more unique than just putting a fuzz face on your pedal board. From bright and clangy to vintage and warm. This can cover a lot of ground. Keep an eye out for when these drop. I'm not entirely sure when Reeves Electro is going to be releasing batches of these, but the best thing to do is to sign up to their mailing list or just follow them on Instagram to receive all the updates. And you know what, that's it from me with the Izzrite today. I'm actually going to go and play this for a couple more hours and get lost with some crazy fuzz tones.